I just thought I'd start another video real quick. Not going to show a whole lot in this video per se, but tell you more about it than do it. Just because it's difficult to do with one hand. We're prepared to put the intake manifold on now permanently. Obviously it's been sitting on there, but we got a set of stainless ARP bolts, intake header bolts, intake manifold bolts that we're going to use. We're going to use our ARP torque lubricant as well. Basically on this motor, you'll see 4 pieces of the gasket that matter for this application. There's also a couple other gaskets that come with this set that I bought, but they're only if I'm using the stock intake plenum and those things. So, but basically you've got your 2 gaskets that mount against the heads, and then you have end gaskets. Some people will tell you, forget the end gaskets, just go with RTV. My thinking is I'm going to use both RTV top and bottom, and go ahead and use the this silicone gasket just as filler for that space. And then of course your intake gaskets on either side against the head, they fit against the head gasket down here, so they're kind of keyed to fit down on there, and they are marked. Let me move this out of the way. And they are marked head side. Where does it say that? Right there it says it, head side. These are Felpro gaskets, you can see. They're marked head side, so this side goes against the head. Be sure to remember that the end and the center jackets are water jackets. So this is a water jacket, this is a water jacket, this is a water jacket. On the water jackets, we'll add silicone to both sides of the gasket, just to make sure we have a good seal against the between the head and the manifold where the water gasket is, because again, water leaks, no, we don't like those. So got both of them in place here, both head gaskets in place, and then we've got these end gaskets. So I'm going to go ahead for now and silicone these in, and then I'll come back to you with the actual setting of the manifold and installation of the bolts. While I'm thinking about it, let me also tell you that I did prime the oil pump, and used my oil pump priming tool right here, and used my Ryobi drill. See if we can get to sit in there now. Use my Ryobi drill and use a 5/8 inch socket. Turned it counterclockwise, unlike my earlier statement, counterclockwise, and had the valve covers off, had oil coming up the push rods. You could see at that time I even had oil dripping outside the side of the off the side of the head. So I stopped doing that pretty quick. We'll keep from making too big a mess. But it did work, worked well. You can see I've also put in the plugs and the wires. And as a matter of fact, you'll see here is the my MSD distributor cap, which I just took the distributor out a while ago to do this job. So I'll be, if I get this done, I'll be reinstalling the MSD distributor. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then from there, I'm going to move on to finishing up the valve covers. Right now I have 1 bolt in these. I bought in T-handled type, but with this single bolt in the center, I didn't want a T-handle sticking out, that far. So use this long bolt that comes with these particular valve covers, and then I got some smaller bolts, shorter bolts to go in here, just to make it look a bit more cohesive. So we'll see about that. Anyway, so let me go RTV this up. I'll get back. All right, so we got everything RTV'd up. You'll notice that the Ascend water jacket, this is water jacket, this is water jacket. Here I'll have RTV, and then there's RTV under and above these strips. Be sure and get these corners right here on all 4 corners, above and below that silicone strip if you choose to use it. Otherwise, they're definite leak points. So we're going to go ahead and set the intake on, and then we'll see about torquing it on. Go back to it again. You can see I set the manifold on. Bolts are in place. 12 bolts on this little monster. There is a bolt pattern which I used. It's readily available on the internet, and see if we can see it here. But basically, it's as you see there, and so we use that bolt pattern to tighten it up. Now, listen, when you tighten this thing up, be sure that you don't just start taking them down to 25 foot-pounds, which is their setting. Go all around, get them hand tight. Go all around, get them snug. Go all around, get them a little tighter. Keep going around and around and around. One of the lovely things about these intakes is they basically sit in a V made by the head on both sides, and then these two end spaces where it seals. You really got to nestle it down in there, and you really want to do it very carefully to keep it, to get it nestled down in there where all surfaces are touching and sealing. So once you're done, you'll have RTV oozing out hither and yan. Certainly want to get that off, or at least clean up the excesses as much as possible. I've cleaned this one up several times, still not happy with it, but what you going to do, right? So we're on. Took it to torque. I won't bother you with that. But just follow that torque pattern, and also just be very careful to bring it down evenly and bring it down slowly. Once you get to torque, go back again, because it'll probably snug up more. After I got to 25 foot-pounds, I probably went around 6 more times. And I was getting small amounts of tightening as I would go. I'll probably even go around it 1 more time, even just to make sure. Because again, it's getting nestled down. These gaskets are getting compressed. You want to keep it, you want it at 25 foot-pounds. Some people say 20 because it's aluminum intake. That aluminum can take 25 on these bolts. So, matter of opinion. Also, I pulled out the distributor before I put this thing back on, because obviously it's very difficult to sneak down in there and not pull a gasket. So I just put that back on. You'll note here's a mark on my carburetor flange, and that mark should be aligned with that pin. This is the way I have it set up. This is number 1. One thing about this, and I just recently set this up and put the wires on it and everything. Let me set the cap on. Look, you can put number 1 anywhere you want. There is kind of a factory standard, but it's not a right and a wrong. You can put number 1 over here. You can put number 1, but you just need to orient the rotor position on the distributor in that position whenever you install it, assuming, as is the case here, we're at top dead center. So this is the one my number 1 is here. Yeah, number 1 is here. If you'll notice, we're not in time. The rotor is over here while we're at top dead center. So all we've got to do is just turn it. And now number 1 should be firing. Number 1 on the rotor should be right at number 1 on the cap, if I can get it to line up. There's number 1 on the cap anyway, and here's the rotor. So we're pretty close. We're going to timing light it anyway. This certainly isn't final timing. It's just you just want to be sure you get it in the ballpark. You just want to be sure you get it in the ballpark so that it's easier to time. And we're certainly in the ballpark again. Here's, if you can see it, I don't know. Here's the mark on the intake, and here's number 1 piston, or number 1 spark plug wire, and number 1 on the rotor was in the same place. So we're very close to correct timing for top dead center. And we're going to go ahead and put the lockdown plate. I'll get this started and I'll go around, but put the lockdown plate on the distributor just so we can keep it in the ballpark. One thing for sure that you need to give consideration to. Now, what is it now? Once you get this thing at top dead center, and you start getting this thing kind of put together and assembled as you're toward the end of your troubles here, Be sure that if you take it off the top dead center for any reason, that you take the woodruff key back 2 turns on the crank so that you'll know roughly that you're back at top dead center. You know, once you lock everything down, once you put your final valve cover assembly, once, you know, as you get this thing closed up, unless you have a top dead center indicator, which screws into your spark plugs, I don't have one. You don't really want to lose top dead center timing. You know, at least not until you've got your distributor installed and those things. Since, I mean, I have mine installed now, so it wouldn't be a big problem. But you certainly don't want to lose track of your timing for a time. One thing you'll note, I've got a stud kit here, which is going to hold my atomic EFI on. One of them is not in. Taking that one with me to Fastenal, get a grade 8 bolt of that dimension, 1 inch deep, with a washer or 2, and so I can use my lift plate there to lift the motor in the future. I certainly have got plenty of bolt holes in the wad on the back of the head that I could use to chain it, but man, I surely don't want to scratch up my paint with chains and nuts and bolts and things that I don't have to. I will admit I'm a little concerned about those aluminum threads holding, but I've been told and I've been witness to those lift plates being used on aluminum intakes without any problem. So we're going to just assume that we're going to be okay. And then I always like to, as much as possible at least, I like to close up my motor when I leave in for the evening. And in this case, I'm just going to set my atomic EFI on loosely, and then I'll stick my breather on top of that, air filter on top of that, just so that, you know, I have a great fear, maybe irrational fear of things falling down into my motor and having to disassemble to some extent to fetch them back out. So the other thing we also got today, besides our intake bolt kit, was a harmonic balancer, and then also we're going to use this stud set for these holes, these bolts on our valve covers. So I'll get those installed at some point. Go ahead and get these valve covers, final installation done on them. Gaskets are in place, just ready to bolt them on. So pretty soon, we're almost there now. Pretty soon we're going to be at the point where I'm just waiting to order my pulley assemblies. Decided to go serpentine on this. So we're going to have, it's a 2-belt serpentine system. So there's one belt that runs off the crank to the water pump to the alternator, and then there's a second, and that has no tensioner pulley. You use tensioners on the alternator. And then on the second belt, that's going to run off the water pump to the maybe off the crank water pump. I don't remember, but it runs through an idler pulley, a tensioner pulley, and then over an air conditioner and a power steering pump. I won't be using those for quite some time, so just gonna set it up with the right water pump, right pulleys, and just for running the alternator initially while we run on the engine test stand. And until it's installed in the car, the truck, we don't really want to, you know, deadhead or run our power steering pump dry. We don't want to run air conditioner dry. So those things will be add-ons as we go. Anyway, so for now, I'm going to say that we're done for the moment. The next thing I might make a video on will be the installation of the micro seal, the rear seal, and the rear cam galley plug, which is still out. And that'll involve hanging it up by that little plate we were talking about, getting it off the engine hoist, or getting it off the engine stand onto the engine hoist, and install those things. So until next time, if you have any questions, please feel free to post and comment. If you have any comments, feel free to post those. You know, subscribe to us if you like. Glad to have followers. Glad to follow other people. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.